Welcome to the AS podcast. I'm going to share with you my experience, but also scientific tools to make sure that you can increase your quality of life. So my name is Kevin Rubens. I've been living with AS for the last 12 years. I think in 2017, in the winter, 2016, I started taking TNF-alpha blockers. Why? Because I could not move anymore. I had so much pain. So I started my injections. And since then, I'm trying to completely change my life because, of course, medication is not everything. And my goal is to get, of course, off the medication and just keep my body healthy in a very natural way. Okay, so that's why I started the podcast. I'm also a rehabilitation scientist, so I studied physiotherapy and also high performance sports. And with this, I'm trying to combine not only my movement, but also just all the other stuff that I'm learning: sleep, nutrition, mindset, and all this stuff, to make sure that I know everything. And this is why I want to also share with you what I know, so you can also take back your own strength and increase your quality of life, right? So first episode, we talked a little bit about vitamin D, and I have good news. If you go outside right now at 12, you can actually enjoy the real vitamin D of the sun already. Okay, so the sun will be strong enough only at the highest point. So go outside, get some sunlight, get some amazing warmth on your body to make sure that you keep your vitamin Ds nice and healthy. Okay, so anyway, next part, I wanted to talk a little bit about aerobic capacity, or Vo2 Max, or aerobic training in general, cardio. First, a little story. So 2 years ago, I started having problems with my heart, or at least I felt I had trouble. So I bought myself like a blood pressure monitor, and I found out I actually had a pretty high blood pressure. So it was 145, 150 over 80, 85. And I was like, okay, I'm still young, this is not so good. So I went to the cardiologist. And this person told me, Kevin, yes, you have high blood pressure. We did a test on the bike. My heart was still looking fine, no worries, all good. But the blood pressure needs to go down. He told me maybe it's time to do some longer, very boring cardio to make sure that your blood pressure goes down, okay? Just to increase the aerobic capacity in your body. So I was doing baseball, which is a very short sport. You don't really need a lot of cardio. I was also doing CrossFit, which is short workout, but very high intense. But I never trained on this very low, easy, longer duration cardio. So this is what I started to do, of course. So I did this for 4 or 5 months. Of course, I'm still doing this, but less intense than what I did before. So I was running, I think, 3 times a week for 45 minutes. Very, very, very slow. Why? Because I wanted to keep my heart rate 60 to 70% of my maximum. So for me, that was around 125, 130 heart rate. And it was hard in the beginning because I was not used to it. So in the beginning, I was running 9 minutes and 30 seconds for 1 kilometer. If you know how slow this is almost walking. Okay, so I started slow, and of course I got better and better. At one point in the end, I think I was running 7 minutes per kilometer on the same heart rate. So it was working. I also felt better. My blood pressure went down, and I was like, okay, cool. This might be an important factor for people with AS, that they also work on their aerobic capacity. And yes, the literature has a lot of stuff that if you train your heart rate, or if you train your cardio, you can actually have better benefits and you will feel better with ankylosing spondylitis. Anyway, these are all words. Let's dive a little bit into science to make sure that we are up to date with what they found. First of all, this is a cool study. So they have asymptomatic men. So those people they're not sick like us, of course, but still, I think this is a very valuable study for everyone. Unfortunately, it's just an observation, so we cannot say that this is the real factor. But like I said, we can keep this in mind and then see maybe we can use some of the results for our own. So they had 172 men. They tested for Vo2 Max. Vo2 Max is the maximum amount of oxygen your body can use during a given exercise. Okay, so they measure this in millimeter of oxygen used in 1 minute per kilogram body weight. You can actually say people with a high VO2 max, their aerobic capacity is great. With lower, they have issues. Okay, so if you put two persons, one is a high one, one is a low one, and you let them run, the one with the high one will run longer and feel less tired than the other one. Okay, so that is a little bit VO2 max. It's not completely it, but let's keep it very simple and say people with high VO2 max have a better aerobic capacity or a better cardio. Now, what they found, this is cool. They all went on the treadmill and they tested the VO2 max. And they also tested different variables of inflammation. Now, what they figured out is the guys who actually had a higher VO2 max, they had lower inflammation markers in the blood. So for example, C-reactive protein was down, which is a marker that a lot of us are actually using. And this is for me, this was already a very important study, even though it has nothing to do with our disease, it has to do with normal population. But this means that if you have a good cardio, you can have lower inflammation in the blood. At least that's what I would say. Okay, so what they found out is the number of VO2 max was 43.5. The average age of the population there was 51. So if I looked it up in like there's a, they have like a paper, you can find it online, how much VO2 max you should have to be good, to be average, to be above or below average, or to be excellent. Okay, so I looked this up and this was actually very average. So it's not even a high VO2 max. For women, of course, which they don't like to do studies on, which is a shame actually because we are completely different. They found it's 4 points lower. So for women around 50 years old, 30 is the average. Okay. Now, if we take this to my score, so my VO2 max, and this is done with my watch, so it's not super accurate. Anyway, my watch tells me I have 49 and I'm 32 years old. For me, in this graph, it says I'm good. So I'm above average, I'm very good. This is a super number. And my fitness age is 20 years old. And I must say, I'm feeling amazing. Okay, I'm a little bit sick right now, as you can heard. As you heard, I'm a little bit sick, but this also happens, right? So this was cool for me. So my hypothesis right away was, okay, what if I increase my VO2 max? Can I even feel better? Is this possible? Yeah. Let's take a look. Good. Okay, the AS population. They already have a lower aerobic capacity. They also have lower lung function than the normal population. This is a given. This is what the science says. We already have less than the normal population. It's like this, okay? So I'll try to tell you some stuff that puts it down or that it's a difference between the normal population. Let's just first come back to the conclusion of the study. They also found that people with AS with a higher aerobic capacity, they scored better on these specific questionnaires. And I'm pretty sure everyone filled those in already. This is the BASFI, this is the Butt Ankylosing Spondylitis Functional Index, and the BASDAI, Butt Ankylosing Spondylitis Disease Activity Index. Those two, people with higher aerobic capacity scored lower on those questionnaires. The first one is functioning of daily life. So what you can still do, put your socks on, put your jacket on, clean, go down on your knees. The BASDAI, for example, is the disease activity. How active is the disease? How much pain do I have throughout the day? So they scored less. So here we already see, even with this little study, that if you have better aerobic capacity, you score better on the questionnaires. Cool. Perfect. So why are we scoring less? This was cool. Okay. There was a study that found that AS are actually people with our disease. We breathe faster during an exercise than the normal population. And this could be because we have the issues with the mobility of the ribs and the thoracic spine. Of course, because we're breathing, the ribs, they need to expand and they need to come back down to neutral. And sometimes you will see that people with our disease, they have less range of motion, which means they need to breathe a little bit more, which is it's not a bad thing, of course, but you also saw that their heart rates went higher. And if we know this, then we know also that they're doing more work than normal population to have the same exercise. Let's say they did 20 minutes. Someone with AS will be more fatigued than a normal population, which is also, again, not a big problem, right? That's fine if we're tired. We will still get better. But it was for me like also a sign, okay, what can we do to make sure we can normalize this again? And now this is a very, very cool thing, which I also didn't expect it. So this same study, they found that the biggest factor for limiting aerobic capacity in our situation is not this ribs, it's not the heart rate, it's not the breathing, it's actually peripheral muscle strength. So they found out that the leg strength difference in people with AS was way different than people of the normal population. Meaning that we have less muscle strength in the legs. And this is crazy because I always thought, okay, we have this issue with the ribs, we have some pain, maybe this can affect also the aerobic capacity, which I think it does as well, but it was cool to see that it was the muscle strength that was the highest one to tell you that you have a lower aerobic capacity or me. Crazy, right? So strength is something super important in this case because this can increase our aerobic capacity. So this is, honestly, if I read this, this is amazing news because what we can do is we can do some strength training, right? Okay, that's the number one. Number two, this is a little bit off topic, but I just wanted to share with you, this is the importance of aerobic training because we have already more issues with cardiovascular issues. So we have problems. We have higher chances for heart attacks, for other stuff regarding the cardiovascular system. So this is important that we keep doing cardio training to make sure that we can live a long and healthy life. Okay, that's just a side note. Okay, what possibilities do we get to increase our aerobic capacity? So now we know that the leg strength is already an important factor. So for me, this would be, for example, do some strength training. Do some strength training to make sure that your legs stay strong. Because what we see is that people with AS are more depressed as well. They're actually moving less, so they lay down more. Why? Because there's pain, which is normal. I had the same. I was lying in bed for 4 weeks. That's why I started taking these TNF alpha blockers. Because I could not do anymore because it was just so painful. Which is normal, of course. And then you lose leg strength. So it's a vicious circle, but we need to break this code and try to get as strong as possible. So a randomized control trial, which is one of the best clinical or science papers you can find. They have 2 groups. One is doing conventional training exercise. So they're doing some exercise program. I think it was, they were on the bike a little bit and then they did a mobility circuit. The other group did exactly the same, but they added inspiratory muscle training. And I would say look this up, but what it does is they are actually breathing into something, so they inhale, and there is resistance. Okay, so it's harder to inhale, which means every time there's resistance, your muscles get trained. Let's say I have a weight in my arm and I'm pulling or pushing this up, I will train my shoulder muscles. Okay, they will get stronger. Same thing with this training. Okay, they have resistance and you will inhale, so your breathing muscles will get way stronger. Okay, there are tools for this. I would say look this up, inspiratory muscle training. Again, I have no connections to whatever. I'm also not a doctor, so before, of course, you start anything new, make sure you visit your doctor first, and then he will tell you what is right or what is wrong. Anyway, what they found between those 2 groups was very impressive again. So the group that added this inspiratory muscle training, they increased their chest expansion test. Maybe you know it, maybe you already did it. They take a measuring tape around your chest. You exhale completely and then inhale. And then you will see there's the measuring tape will go, of course, wider, and then they can have, like I said, let's say 10 centimeters and that means you have a very good rib cage movement. Okay, so it's more mobility of the rib cage and the thoracic spine. This increased with this inspiratory muscle training. Crazy, right? They also increased their aerobic capacity, and they also increased lung function tests. How amazing is this? This is already good news for people that have issues walking or doing other kind of movements. They can actually have this little tool they put in their mouth and just do this, train this for maybe 10-15 minutes each day, and this will already increase their cardio. Insane. What they are inventing these days is very cool. Anyway, what else can we do? Of course, if you want to increase your cardio, there's the normal stuff you can do, and that is just do cardio training, right? So what we found out is specifically for increasing your Vo2 max is you can train at very high intensities. Now, if you're not a cardio addict, I would say watch out with this, because you will also go in higher heart rates, and sometimes people are not used to it. So this is a tool that is already for more experienced aerobic people with AS. So it's gonna be 4 minutes, and of course this can start at 1 minute. This can and then go increase to 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. But this is just an example. 4 sets, 4 minutes of work, 4 minutes break, and then you're done for today. You try to go as hard as you can in those 4 minutes. Get the heart rate up, 90% probably of your max, and then you have a break of 4 minutes. And then you do this 4 times, and this is going to give your Vo2 max a good training, and you will also increase your Vo2 max. Number 2 is the lower intensity, what I did, for example, zone 2 training. This is the heart rate zone where you can still speak. So if you're running or walking or swimming or biking or rowing with your friend, you could still speak to each other. For me, it was around 125, 130 heart rate. And this is something you, of course, need to do a little bit longer. 30 to 45 minutes, twice or 3 times a week. This will help you to build some capacity and will make you feel better. And hopefully, it will also lower down your inflammation. Last thing, and this is I put there extra, it is incline walking. So of course, if you have mountains, you can do this, but if you don't have any mountains, in the gym you have these treadmills and you can actually increase their inclination. Why? Because there is more resistance when you go up. And we discussed a little bit how important the leg strength is as well for aerobic capacity. That means with inclination, you can also train the strength of your legs. Wow. So that's 2 in 1. You increase your cardio and you increase your leg strength. Of course, you can also go on the bike and just turn up the resistance a little bit. Same thing. Okay, perfect. We're almost finished. So of course, there are way more different methods to increase your aerobic capacity. I'm not going to mention them all. Most important is from the moment you're moving, the heart rate will go up and you're working on your cardio. Okay, so you don't even need to follow any of this. If you go for your walks 30 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, whatever, this will already increase your cardio because the blood will be pumping, the heart rate will go up. Okay, super important. Why? Because this, hopefully, what we learned today is this can decrease your inflammation. This can also make you feel better, so your disease activity might go down, but also your functioning throughout the day will also increase. Okay, and of course, you can protect your heart for the future. Okay, yeah, thank you for listening. I hope it was a little bit clear. If you have any questions, please put them in the YouTube in the comments, and then I will try to answer them as quickly as I can. I hope you learned something, and then especially most important is keep moving. Movement is medicine, and we see each other soon. Ciao.